Many years ago, I took a pen and I sat down and I said, I'm going to build a company that operates all over the world. And that's essentially what we're doing. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today is your results. I want you to think about the results that you're getting in various aspects of your life. Could be your income. It might be your personal relationships. It might be the development of your corporation. You could have a large corporation, maybe a small one. You might be a one-person operation. But you get results. I learned a long time ago that results always tell the truth. You can never escape from them. The results always tell the truth. Now, if we are on the right track, it's of my opinion anyway, that our results should always be under construction. We always want to be shooting for something a little bit beyond where we're at, because that is how we grow. And growth is the name of the game. There's a very basic law of life, a dynamic law. It's create or disintegrate. If we're not getting better, we're going in the opposite direction. And I don't think any of us go there directly, intelligently, because we choose to. I think we go backwards every now and then because we make some errors. So growth is a very important part of our life, and it's something that we should all be involved in all the time. I've been working at this for a long, long time. And I found if we're going to grow, we're going to have to change. And if we don't change, we're not going to grow. Okay? Now, the Proctor Gallagher Institute is involved in change. That's really what we're all about. That's what our consultants are about. We have programs that are designed to help you improve the quality of your life. Now, the beautiful truth is that you and I can actually create our own income, create our own economy. Now, there's not a lot of people that believe that, and I certainly didn't for a long, long time. Do you know, we get inundated with newspapers, with television, with radio, and just overhearing conversations, maybe in a restaurant or with someone that we work with. How difficult it is to manage in the economy that we're working in. And we're always talking about the Dow or what New York Stock Exchange is doing. We're looking at something outside of ourselves all the time. The truth is, it operates inside of ourselves. Do you know that in the very worst economy, there's people that are winning and winning in a very big way? And in the very best economy, there's people that are losing. They just don't seem to be able to make it happen. So, you know, if you study this objectively, it doesn't matter whether the economy is good or bad. What makes the difference is, where is your mind at? What are you doing? Where are you going? Do you know, for the first 26 years of my life, I was going in the wrong direction and I was picking up speed. The idea that I could create my own economy was a very far-fetched concept. Now, a man did tell me that, but I never believed it. In fact, I didn't believe hardly anything that I heard when it came to improving the quality of my life. I was losing. I was hanging around people that were losing, and that was the conversation of the day, and that's pretty well where my head was at. And then one day it changed. And it didn't change by accident. It changed by design. It changed by someone who's probably very much like the consultant that you're talking to. It changed because someone sat down with me and they wrote an R on a sheet of paper. Then he said, Bob, let that R represent the results you're getting in your life. Now, my results were not under construction, although they should have been. And then he put 3 letters down beside it. He said, let that represent happiness, health, and wealth. And he asked me if I thought he was a happy guy. And I looked at him, and I didn't know him real well. And I said, yeah, he seemed pretty happy to me. He said, have you ever seen me when I was sick? I had to admit I hadn't. He said, did you ever see me when I was broke? This man always had a lot of money in his pocket. And that caught my attention more than anything, because I never had any. And he said, Bob, you are about one of the unhappiest guys I've ever met. He was being very honest. I was unhappy. And he said, you're not the healthiest guy in town. You always seem to have a headache or a cold or something. And he said, you're always broke. And that's true. That's exactly how my day went. And I was earning $4,000 a year at the time, and I owed $6,000. Now, I'm going back to 1961. This is not yesterday. It was quite a long time ago. But if you're earning $4,000 and you owe $6,000, it's fairly obvious I would have taken every cent I earned for 18 months just to break even if I'd paid nothing but paid debts. You see, it was an impossible situation. And I have found over the years that that's pretty well the way a lot of people are looking at life. They're in an impossible situation. They just cannot see how they're going to get out of it because they have a tendency to look at where they're at physically, and they never ask themselves about the power that they have locked up within them. I certainly didn't. I was no exception. And he said, Bob, do you enjoy those results? Well, of course I didn't enjoy them. I mean, I thought it was sort of a dumb question. He said, well, do you ever think of changing your results? And to tell you the truth, I don't think it ever did enter my mind. With me, it was always just get by. See, I was actually living a day at a time, and although it wasn't planned, that's just the way it was. When I woke up in the morning, it was get through the day, because I owed everyone I talked to money. I was not a happy person, and I was hanging around with a group of people who were much like myself. We have a tendency to attract people to us that are much like we are. And that was a sad situation. Then he said to me, he said, Bob, do you ever read anything? Now, I said, no, I can't read. Now, that wasn't true. I could, but I didn't. I didn't even read comic books. And he showed me a book. And he said, Bob, this book was written by a man that was mentored by the wealthiest man in the world at that time. The book is Think and Grow Rich. It's by Napoleon Hill. Now, this book is falling apart. He gave me this book. That was in 1961. That was a long time ago. He said, if you will read this every day, he said, the man spent his whole life writing it. He said, I think it would be a prudent move on your part if you spent the rest of your life reading it. It's called Think and Grow Rich. Now, I thought the title was sort of comical. Think and Grow Rich. You see, I didn't know anybody that was rich, in my opinion. I've since wrote a book called You Were Born Rich, and we're all born rich. Most people are just a little short of money. But he said, if you read this every day. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I had never read a book in my life. I could read, but not well. I since found out that most people don't read very well. Most people read at about a grade 7 level, and that's because we learn to read by the time we're in grade 6, and we never improve upon the skill from that point on. And he said, do exactly what I tell you. Now, you know, he didn't tell me what to eat or what time to go to bed, but I had never done what I was told. I spent a number of years in the Canadian Navy, and I was punished many times because I wouldn't do what I was told. I don't know. I seemed to resent authority. I was going in the wrong direction, and I just rejected any kind of advice I got. For some strange reason, I started to listen to this man. His name was Raymond Douglas Stanford. In fact, I have a son, Raymond Douglas Proctor. I named him after this man. And I don't know why, but I decided I would read the book, and I would do what he told me. Now, I had many doubts in my mind as to whether I would stick with it, but that was the thought at the time. Now, my life started to change like night and day. Within a year, my income had gone from $4,000 and in debt $6,000. It went to a point where I was earning $175,000 a year. Now, I hadn't earned $175,000 in the year, but my income went to $14,000 and change a month. If you annualize that, that's $175 a year. So it went from $4,000 to $175. If somebody had told me I could do that, I would have never believed him. In less than 5 years, my income went over $1 million. And I'm going to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. Now, somebody say, well, what were you doing? I was actually cleaning offices. You see, when I first set the goal, it was to straighten out my finances. It was to earn some money. I set a goal of earning $25,000. Now, I really didn't even know anyone with $25,000. But he said, the book told me, and he told me, he said, write what you want on a card and carry it with you. And so I started to think of earning money. And I have since explained to many people, if your goal is to get out of debt, you'll probably stay in debt forever. That is not a good goal. You're going to track whatever you think about all the time. You got to get rid of the debt, set up an automatic debt repayment program, then focus on prosperity. At any rate, someone said there's good money cleaning floors. I said, I'm not proud I'll clean floors. So I started to clean one office. I got $15 a time to wash the floor, and I washed it twice a month. Pretty soon I got another office at $65 a month. Now I'm up to $95. Now keep in mind I was only earning $4,000 a year. That's $100 a week. And I'm up to $100 a month extra money. It was quite a bit. And then it went up and up and up. Now, I was living in England. I was cleaning offices. I had offices in Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Cleveland, Atlanta, and London, England. The business grew very, very fast. I was doing exactly what this book told me and doing exactly what this man suggested. And one day I sat down and I thought, how did this happen? You see, I had no formal education. I had 2 months high school. I had no business experience. I had a horrendous work record. And all of a sudden, bang, like this, all this success. And I was living in England. I went over and opened a company there. And I didn't really know why I was winning. Now, the thought came to my mind that I was lucky, but I knew that wasn't the truth because I really don't believe in luck. Voltaire said we invented that word to express the known effects of unknown causes. So I knew I wasn't lucky. I was raised with the idea, if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. Well, $1 million to me at that time was a lot of money. And I knew I wasn't that smart. So I couldn't figure out why I was so successful. To me, I didn't seem to be doing anything that was extraordinary. But if somebody asked me, I would say, well, I'm cleaning offices. But I found out that cleaning offices was almost incidental to what I was doing. I had been working on me solidly for 5 years, and I had been helping the people that I was working with to work on themselves. I was very involved in a program of personal growth, and everything started to change. Now, there's something in this book that really made a difference. You see, I made up my mind I was going to find out why I changed. I wasn't satisfied with the idea that I did change. I was going to find out. So what I'm going to explain from this point on is what I learned over the next 10 years. I studied this like an absolute scientist for 10 years. I spent a lot of money and I did a lot of work. So if you really want to change your life, I've done the work and I've spent the money. You don't have to do all that. I'm going to lay out what I learned over that period of time. And when I figured out exactly why I changed, all I wanted to do was teach it. And that's all I've done for a long, long time. This company has been going since 1961. That's 58 years. I have a phenomenal business partner, a lady who was an attorney, who was a securities attorney, something almost a polar opposite to where I come from. She had turned companies public. She would buy banks, sell banks, turn them public. Very, very brilliant woman. And when she joined us a little over 10 years ago, our company took a big jump because she brought an expertise in that I certainly didn't have. I know how to earn it. I didn't know how to work with it. Our company has worked all over the world. We have worked with some of the largest corporations in the world. We watched their sales go up by hundreds of millions of dollars. I couldn't even mention the number of individuals we've sat down and worked with. When I do a seminar in Los Angeles, or we do, because my partner, Sandy Gallagher, she does it with me, our team goes there, we will stream into over 115 countries. You see, the goal that I set a long time ago, we're now realizing we're living it. So what I'm going to show you is what I have learned over my lifetime. I have tested this every way you can think of. Some of the most brilliant people in the world have tested this. We don't wonder if it works. We know it works, and we've worked it all over the world. So I'm going to ask you, if you're a little skeptical, set the skepticism aside. Just set it aside. And when I'm all finished, if you want to still be skeptical, then do it then. I'm going to ask you to open your mind and sit back and really listen carefully. And don't listen just to hear. One of the most wonderful things I learned a year ago, or learned last year, I learned a lot of things last year, but this one thing stands out in my mind over everything else. It was a quote by Steve Covey, who's gone now, God bless him, but he was a wonderful teacher. He said, don't listen to hear, listen to understand. And that's what I want to recommend you do. Listen to understand what it is I'm going to explain. Because what I'm going to explain can change your life like night and day. And I don't even care where you're at now. I've gone into prisons with this. I've gone into schools. I've gone into some of the largest companies. We've shared this with millions of people all over the world. All over the world. Last time we went into a place, we went into Kosovo, we had 7 different languages that were being translated simultaneous as we were teaching this. So we've been all over the place. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your background is. It's where you're at right now. If you want to improve where you're at right now, what I'm going to share with you is the answer. Now, here's one of the first things I learned as we opened this book. The author points out something very interesting. He said there's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one's ready for a thing until they believe that they can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief and not mere hope or wish. Now, he said open-mindedness is essential to belief. Closed minds will not inspire faith, courage, or belief. So I'm going to ask you to open your mind and really think. If you're wishing you could get that car, or if you're wishing this could happen to your company, or you're wishing you could do this, forget it. It ain't going to happen. You see, if you want to be ready for the good that you desire, you've got to believe that you can do it. Now, I have found there's only 2 sources of reference we can go to find out anything about ourselves. One science and the other is theology. There's only a half a dozen religions, so if you want to do the research, it's not too exhausting. And I've studied both sides now for my entire adult life, and I have found that regardless of the religion, or regardless of the psychology that you're involved in, they will all teach you one thing: you got to believe. You got to believe. That played in my mind for a long, long time. How do you believe? That's probably a question you're asking yourself. How do you believe? Well, you know, I had a wonderful mentor. I've had 7 phenomenal mentors. Leland Valvanderwall, he was a great big man. He and I became very good friends. All my mentors became good friends with me, and I with them. We were sitting in a restaurant one day, and just in idle conversation, he said, our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something. And frequently, if we reevaluate a situation, our belief about it will change. Now, this idea of belief had been plaguing my mind. So I said, what did you just say? I said, I'm not sure. It's about belief. Yeah. He said, our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something. And frequently, if we reevaluate a situation, our belief about it will change. I thought, that is really interesting. Now look, hope and wish doesn't cut it, but belief will. Belief will. If you listen real carefully to what I'm going to explain, and this is a very short presentation, and I got to keep my eye on the time, odds are pretty good you can start believing that you can do what you want to do. Now here's something beautiful. Remember, no more effort is required in order to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and poverty. I have found out it's much easier to win in a big way than it is to lose. Now think of this. There's 2 things that you must know if you're going to create time and money freedom, and I think that's something everybody wants. You've got to know where you are, you've got to know exactly where you're going, and you've got to get moving in that direction. Now that's so simple and so obvious, you have to ask yourself, why are so many people stuck? Now I've been in this business a long time, and I can tell you, without doing any research, most people are stuck. There's only 3 or 4 or 5% of the people that are really making it happen. The rest are struggling trying to make it happen. And some of them are absolutely brilliant people. You know brilliant people. They've got degrees coming off the end of their business card, and they're stuck. You see, most of us have been taught that you've got to have goals. Well, I think everybody has goals. Some of them maybe are a little more articulate than others. They may not have their goal in writing or something, but, you know, there's something they want. That would fall in the category of a goal. I don't think that's where the problem is. I think the problem's over here. It's where we are. That is really the problem. You see, we're being controlled by something called a paradigm. Now, you may be wondering, well, what the heck is a paradigm? Paradigm is a large problem for almost everyone. Companies have paradigms. It's called culture. Countries have paradigms. It's called culture. Every individual is a paradigm. It's an idea in our subconscious mind. We didn't even build it. Somebody else built it. Here's the best definition of paradigm you may ever find. Paradigm is a mental program that has almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior, and almost all of our behavior is habitual. Now think about that. We wake up in the morning and we just motor into action. And somebody else wrote the program that's controlling our behavior. Now, that's rather sad, but it's the way it is. I want you to look at the areas of your life paradigms have control over. This is very important. Paradigms control our perception. And our perception is our reality. It's how we see things. It controls our perception. Paradigms control our use of time. A lot of people buy time management programs and they're trying to manage time. Time can't be managed. Nobody manages time. And yet everybody gets exactly the same amount of time. We get all there is. There's no one gets any more time than another. We get all there is. So it's what we do with our time. We merely manage activities. Our paradigm manages our creativity. You'll hear people say, well, I'm really not creative. Writers are creative, musicians. Everybody's creative. You're God's highest form of creation. There is nothing on the planet that'll even equal you. Our paradigms control our effectiveness, and our effectiveness controls our productivity. So do you see, this program that's inside us is controlling us. Our paradigms control our logic. There are certain things we say, well, you've got to be realistic. Is that right? Can you imagine the neighbors over in Dayton, Ohio, back around 1903? There's two young bicycle mechanics, and they said, we're going to fly. Nobody had ever flown. People had died trying. They're they weren't aeronautical engineers. And they introduced us to a new kingdom. Now, when they got us off the ground, somebody said, well, they were only up there for 14 seconds. Their attitude, their perception was different. They said, we not only got it up there, we kept it up for 14 seconds. Think. And our paradigm controls our ability to earn money. People that haven't got any will tell you money's not important. People that have it know how important it is. Money's vitally important in the area that it's used. It's the medium of exchange that's used by everyone all over the world in exchange for other people's products or services. I had a mentor, Earl Nightingale, and he said one time something that I thought was rich with truth. He says, most people think they want more money than they really do, and they settle for a whole lot less than they could earn. Now think. There seems to be a box around all these areas. And every time we go to step out and change our use of time or change our perception, we hit the wall. We hit the wall. When you make up your mind that you're going to change the paradigm, I am going to learn what it is and I'm going to change it. It's a program in my subconscious mind. I'm going to change it. The walls come down. The walls actually come down. Now that doesn't mean you change anything, but you can now and you don't hit the wall. The change will be huge. And I'm going to tell you something else. The change is permanent when you learn how to change the paradigm. It's a beautiful concept. Now, look at this. Imagine if that was the only thing you changed. Your use of time. I remember talking to Earl Nightingale one time, and he said, Bob, there's no secret to this. I carry a sheet of paper in my pocket and a pen. I was having breakfast with him when he said this one morning. I'll never forget it. He said, I just simply sit down at night and I write down 6 goal-achieving activities I'm going to be involved in tomorrow. And then when I wake up, I do them. He says, you can't manage time, you can manage activity. Now, as you learn to manage those activities, you're going to find that your income is going to skyrocket. As you alter your perception, your ability to earn money is going to skyrocket. Joel Barker wrote a book on paradigms around 1990. It was an incredible book. That's what it was called, Paradigm. He said, to be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm. Now, you can be willing, but may not be able because you don't understand how it was built. School does not teach this. I don't care what school you go to. I've worked with people that were Rhodes Scholars, people from Harvard, Stanford. eaten. They didn't understand it because they were never taught. Most psychiatrists, psychologists, or behavioral scientists that teach it, they teach it in such a way that it's only understood by other psychologists, psychiatrists, or behavioral scientists. I'm going to show you a way that I was taught. It was taught so that I could understand it. Remember I said I had no formal education? Well, I teach this today to psychiatrists. This has to be some of the best information you're ever going to find. Now, I want you to look at the mind and paradigms. But let's get more specific. I'm going to suggest you look at your mind and your paradigms. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, to do that, you have to understand something about the mind. In 1934, Dr. Truman Fleet was very involved in the holistic healing and the healing arts. And he said, the mind's an activity, it's not a thing. In order to gain clarity and eliminate confusion, he said, I'm going to create a picture of the mind. Do you know nobody's ever seen the mind? Nobody's ever seen it. Most people think of the brain when they think of the mind, but the brain isn't the mind any more than your fingernail is. Mind is an activity. Brain is an electronic switching station. As you activate brain cells, it alters the vibration of a part of your body. For me to move my arm up and down like that, I have to activate a group of cells in my brain. Now, we have found if a person has a stroke, let's think of this. The brain is the greediest part of the body when it comes to blood. It wants all the blood. If the blood stops going to a particular part of the brain, bang, like that, a group of cells die. Instantly, they die. And the person may lose the use of this arm and leg. Well, we found if we take that and just open their hand, close their hand, move their arm up, move them down, open hand, and keep doing that. It's a form of patterning. We will educate healthy cells to do what the damaged cells can no longer do. Now, what I mentioned that just to get across to you, your brain is an electronic instrument. Your brain will not think, but you think with your brain. It's reported we have Albert Einstein's brain in a jar somewhere in Jersey, but it's not doing anybody any good because Albert's not with it. Your mind activates brain cells. Now, this good doctor said, nobody's ever seen the mind, so I'm going to draw a picture of the mind. Now, the first time I saw that, I laughed. I said, this is pretty simple. It looks like something out of a comic book. But the guy told me, he said, this is no comic book. This is probably one of the most powerful ideas you'll ever see. And he took and he drew a line right through the big circle. He said, let the big circle represent your mind and the little one represent your body. The top half of the circle we're going to say is our conscious mind. The bottom half we'll say is the subconscious, and the little circle represents the body. Now, without question, in all the years I've been studying, this is, without question, the most valuable idea I've ever learned. I want to suggest you burn this into your mind and take it serious. You sit down with any consultant, the consultant that invited you, and they can go through this. They'll show you programs that explain this. You can teach it to your children. And I guarantee you, when the kids start to learn, their grades go up in school. Your relationships become stronger. You start to understand why people are like they are and why they're doing what they're doing. Because you're starting to understand you. And you're the only thing you have to study. There's something phenomenal about you. It's so incredible that in all our study, the wisest among us do not really know all there is to know about ourselves. So let's take this little drawing and we'll run through some basics. There's the conscious mind, the subconscious, and the body. Now, the conscious mind is our thinking mind. That's the part of us that thinks. Thinking is the highest function we're capable of. I remember Earl Nightingale, who was a mentor of mine. He said one time, if most people said what they were thinking, they would be speechless. I laughed and I thought, but as I started to think about it, I thought the guy's right. Listen to most conversations. It's obvious people aren't thinking or they never say what they're saying. Or stand back and watch the way people behave. It's going to become obvious they're not thinking or they never do many of the things they're doing. Now, the conscious mind can think. This is called our educated mind. This is where school is focused on you storing knowledge. And of course, this is where intellect is resident. Now, do you know most people go through their whole life and they never learn about their intellectual factors? And it's the intellectual factors that separate you from all the rest of the animal kingdom. Think of this for a moment. You and I are the only creature on the planet that is totally disoriented in our environment. All the other little creatures on the planet are completely at home in their environment. They blend in. We are totally disoriented because we have been given these higher faculties. It gives us the ability to create our own environment. So you see right at the front when I said you can create your own economy, or you really can, and you do. You are. Whether you're aware of it or not really makes little difference. Now the subconscious mind is quite different. That's the emotional mind. That's the part of you where the paradigm is. Now let's switch this over at the top. Because you can think, you have the ability to choose. Do you know you choose everything you do? You'll say there's things you have to do. No, there's really not. You say, we have to pay taxes. No. You could move to a tax-free zone or you could go to jail. It's a choice. Everything we do, we choose to do. Now, most people never, ever, ever become really, truly aware of that, but that's the way it is. You and I have the ability to accept or reject. When we see something in the paper, on the news, we can accept it or reject it. We do not have to accept. We have the ability to think. We can choose. We can say, I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to stay in control of me. And if you reject it, you have the ability to originate. You're a creative being. You're God's highest form of creation. Now, the emotional mind doesn't work this way. The emotional mind must accept everything you give to it. It has no ability to reject. Whatever is placed in the subjective mind, it must accept. The subconscious mind is immoral. It's like the earth. It doesn't care what you plant, but it'll grow whatever you plant. Earl Nightingale placed that idea very well in his Strangest Secret recording. He said, you can plant nightshade, a deadly poison, and not a 16th of an inch away, you can plant corn, a sweet food. One will grow with just as great an abundance as the other. The earth doesn't care what you plant, but it will return what you plant. That's the same with your subconscious mind. Now get this. This is a beautiful thing to really understand. Your subconscious mind cannot differentiate between what's real and what's imagined. You can imagine something terrible happening, you'll get upset. You can imagine something beautiful happening, and it will inspire you. Subconscious doesn't know the difference. And you've been given an imagination, one of the most magnificent tools you've got. Well, where does the paradigm come in, and what do we do? Well, let's take a look at that. Let's close the window on this for a moment, or let's look at how we operate today. Here we are today. I just use the information we've given you, and you're being inundated with information. In the conscious mind, I said you had an intellectual factor. One of them is reason. Reason gives you the ability to think. So we're getting hit with information where it's doom and gloom. We can say, get out of here and get rid of all that information. But we don't do that. What do? We leave our mind wide open, and it goes right into our subconscious mind. What do we say about the subconscious? It has no ability to reject. It'll accept whatever you give to it. Why? Well, that's part of the paradigm. That's part of the program. You stop thinking, your subconscious mind will accept whatever you give to it. Somebody can give you a negative idea and you'll start to get emotionally upset. And a negative idea could be a lie. It might not be true at all, but you accept it, so you'll get upset. Why? How did the paradigm get there? Well, let's take a look at that. We'll go over here. This is when you're an infant. This is how you arrive on the scene. When a baby arrives, the baby doesn't have a language. Baby has no conscious faculties. The baby's mind is wide open. It's like a cup. You can put anything in it you want. And we do. We dump all kinds of stuff in it. Do you know almost all welfare recipients are third, fourth, fifth generation welfare recipients? Now, this is a rather strange thing, but it's the way it is. That's why a baby speaks the language it does, why they like the food they like. And over, that is dumped into their mind. This is actually where the baby's self-image was formed in a very early life. And then that self-image carries them right through life. That's the image we hold of ourselves. And you can never outperform your self-image. Maxwell Maltz wrote a great book on it, Psycho-Cybernetics, back around 1960, was considered one of the greatest psychological discoveries of our generation. So here we are here with the paradigm. Self-image is one idea. Paradigm is a multitude of ideas that have been planted in the subconscious mind. Here we are 10, 20, 50, 70 years later, and we're still letting those same ideas control us. Look at this for a moment. We go to school. School gave us valuable knowledge. However, school never taught us anything about a paradigm. So we frequently do not do what we already know how to do. And if you think about this, here you got superior knowledge, inferior results, so it causes confusion and frustration. Let's put our model up here again. And what did school do? School loaded us up with books. We passed all the exams. We got the degree. But you know what's missing? the results. The results don't seem to jive with all the knowledge the person's got. So we know people who are absolutely brilliant. They've got all kinds of degrees, but they're not getting any results. They're broke. They don't even know how to find a job. Little do they know that they could start a company and create all kinds of jobs. Why don't the results? Because it's not the knowledge that produces the results. It's the paradigm that produces the result. The paradigm controls the behavior. The behavior produces the results. You see, if you want to change your results, we talked right in the beginning, our results should be under construction all the time. If you want to change your results, you must change the paradigm. And that's really what the Proctor Gallagher Institute is doing. We have all kinds of wonderful programs. Let the consultant sit down with you. Let him explain just how simple it is for you to multiply your income. Change things like night and day. You see, it's not who you are that's holding you back. It's who you think you're not. Man, that's such a powerful statement. It's not who you are that's holding you back. It's who you think you're not. There's something so phenomenal about you. And when you learn it, everything starts to improve. However, when paradigms stay in control, nothing changes. You keep getting the same results year after year after year. Results always tell the truth. That's interesting. I don't care how smart you think you are, the results always tell what the paradigm is. We got to learn this. Buckminster Fuller put it very well. He said, you never change things by fighting existing reality. You change things by building a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's exactly what I did 58 years ago. Didn't understand that's what I was doing at the time. Then it took me a number of years before I figured out what I had done. I literally built a new model. If you would like to build a new model that guarantees the rest of your life be the way you want it to be, sit down with our consultant. Let them share with you. They're well trained. They've got phenomenal programs. They can explain this to you. They explain how it works. It's a fascinating subject. You build a new model. That's exactly what I had done. It took me 10 years, 9.5 exactly, and I'd been studying this with some of the most brilliant people alive, trying to figure out why did Bob change? Why did I go with no formal education to earn myself all this money? I had the good fortune of working with Eric Hoffer back in 1969 and 70. He said, in times of rapid change, the learners will inherit the earth. Well, the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with the world that no longer exists. Now, you know, there's no such thing as a learned person. You're either learning or you're not. It isn't something you fill up and put a cap on. And he said, the learners will inherit the earth. I took that to be metaphorical, that you would be happy, healthy, and wealthy. When you start to study you, that's what all of our programs do. That's what our consultant can help you do. Everything in your life is going to look different. Life should be and can be absolutely incredible. Now he said to learn, you need a certain degree of confidence. Not too much, not too little. If you have too little confidence, you'll think you can't learn. I lived so long like that. And then this man convinced me I could learn. Ray Stanford said, Bob, do exactly what I'm telling you, and you can have anything you want. I didn't believe that, but I believed he believed it. Let our consultant sit down with you. He said, if you have too little confidence, you think you can't learn. If you have too much, you think you don't have to learn. Look at your results. You have to make a decision. Now, in a very short period of time, I've shared an awful lot of information. It's what I learned over 10.5 years. And you know what most people never do? They never learn to make a decision. They just learn to make a decision. He spent a whole chapter on it. Let these lines represent levels of vibration. Your phone operates on a frequency. We call levels of vibration a frequency. We think on frequencies. We literally think on frequencies. Thought is energy. And you think on frequencies. Now, some people are on a much higher frequency than others. The results you're getting are nothing but the manifestation of your own thoughts. Do you know that's the one point all great leaders have agreed on? Go back and study them. Study any of them. In biblical times, right up to today. The great business leaders, every one of them, have been in complete unanimous agreement on this one point. They've disagreed in virtually everything else. You and I become what we think about. We become what we think about. What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? Ask yourself that. We say, these are the results I'm getting, but that's the result I want. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that as soon as I get the money. I'm going to do that as soon as the kids are out of school. I'm going to do that, and it's always when this changes. And you know something? This is never going to change because you never built a new model. And so pretty soon, the decision fades. The decision fades, and so does the goal. Why? Well, if we understand our own world, it soon becomes pretty obvious. We're thinking way down here on this frequency. And what we're shooting at is way up there on a higher frequency. We're down here, it's like we're listening on an AM frequency and wonder why we're not getting FM music, higher frequency. If I phone your number, your phone's the only one that's going to ring. There's millions of phones because I'm on your frequency. I don't get my brother if I phone you. I only get my brother if I get on his frequency. And you see, if you want to get the goal, you got to start thinking. You get your mind and your thoughts focused on the same frequency as what you want. Now, this is how decisions should be made. You see? When you make a committed decision, this is going to be done. I'm going to do this. You don't ask yourself, do I have the money? Do I have the time? Do I have the help? You don't ask any of those questions. He points out in here that successful people make decisions very fast, change them very slow, if and when they change them at all. And for years I wondered, how do they make the decisions so fast? How do they gather so much information? They don't need to gather information. They made a committed decision. They begin to think and act like the person they want to become. They let go of the past. And when they think on that frequency, they will start to attract everything that is required because that's where the good that you desire is. Now, this may sound a little futuristic if you've never studied into this. Nothing is created or destroyed. Everything's already here. The way to make one of these cell phones has always been here, but nobody got on that frequency. The way to do whatever you want is already here, but you got to get on that frequency. Just see, want is the only prerequisite when you go to make a decision. If you really want to make things happen, sit down with the consultant and say, I definitely want to. Do exactly what the consultant suggests. You do what we suggest, I guarantee you'll win. We've been at this a long time. We've got a great reputation all over the world. Not just in one city. Our office is in Phoenix. Our business is in 77 different countries. And when we stream, we go into 115 different countries. Want is the only prerequisite. It's the only prerequisite anyone has ever needed to do anything of any consequence. This is something very few people understand. If I want it and I see myself with it, I put myself on that frequency and I'll start to attract whatever I need. See, that's why successful people make decisions so fast. They know what they want. And they know that they're God's highest form of creation, and they know they're going to get it. This information is so valuable. It's the most valuable information you'll ever get. What I've shown you here is just a peek. This is the Reader's Digest version. It's like peeking through a keyhole at it. The consultant that invited you on this call is very well equipped to sit down and explain to you in a little greater depth what I've just explained. But you know something? They can't make a decision for you. You got to make a decision. And the second you make the decision, you'll start to attract what you need. If it's money you need, you'll attract it. Just look around your home. You got all kinds of stuff in your home you don't need. You know why you got it? Because you wanted it. When you want this bad enough, you will find the money that you require to make it happen. I learned that a long time ago. For further information on the personal growth programs that will improve all aspects of your life, contact your local Proctor Gallagher consultant. Because I'm going to tell you, they have some absolutely phenomenal information. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank all our consultants, and I certainly want to thank the consultant that invited you here. Because I know you appreciate this.